Welcome to Jim White's webinar series. Jim has been investing, coaching executives, and turning around companies for over 30 years. Now your host, Dr. Jim White.
Hello, this is Jim White, and it's May the 19th, 2020. And welcome to part 2 of my Critical Thinking webinar series. As we discussed last week in part 1, the objectives of the series are as follows. Understand the components of critical thinking, utilize non-linear thinking, which we're going to be talking more about this evening, using logical thinking, which we're going to talk about more this evening as well, because I don't know about you. Have you ever had one of those days? Man, it's been one of those days. And it should be a Monday, but it's been one of those days. Number 3, recognize what it means to be a critical thinker. And again, that bullet is very appropriate as well. Evaluate information using critical thinking skills and identify the benefits of critical thinking. And there are many, many benefits for critical thinking, and that's the objectives. And for some reason, I don't think I could have planned this session any better based on the beginning of my week. It's so appropriate. So, and then the other 2 bullets are revise your perspective when necessary. That's a big deal as well. Comprehend problem-solving abilities. Those are the objectives of this series. And as I said last week, we're going to continue the series probably in through September. Not necessarily they're going to be in a row. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, depending on other events that are occurring. But I think this series is extremely important. Extremely important for many, many reasons. Extremely important for being able to think and analyze and make decisions in preparation for November of 2020 when we go to the polls and elect a new president in the United States and other political leaders. It's also important in business, making business decisions. It's also important being able to make career decisions and not stepping on landmines to blow up your career in order to be able to think. Got to learn how to think and think critically. So let's dig in. Non-linear thinking. We can approach critical thinking and problems. It's in a step-by-step fashion. And this is what I'm seeing missing on a daily basis of recent. Step-by-step fashion. This is called linear or vertical thinking. Linear or vertical thinking. And as we discussed last week, this subject matter can be a little dry. My objective with each and every session is to be able to give you absolute content that's accurate and that you can use should you choose to use this information to be able to benefit your personal life and your business and your political life as well. This is called linear and vertical thinking. However, often we tend to not line up the premises in a normal step-by-step fashion. In other words, we don't line things up in our thought process, step by step. And that's what linear thinking is. When we approach a problem in a different order, we are using non-linear thinking. The majority of the problems that I've seen in the past few days has been non-linear thinking. Not in a logical order, in a different order. We're using non-linear thinking. It's looking at it backwards, if you will. Sometimes the non-linear thinking is also called lateral thinking. Lateral thinking. And these are all clinical terms, and I realize that. And again, as I said, I realize how dry this information can be, but is this linear? And you understand the thought process. And then hopefully you take away from these sessions all of these terms and you would have enough interest to maybe to investigate and study more, right? So in order to be able to do linear thinking and nonlinear thinking, it pushes you to step out of your comfort zone sometimes. Step out of your comfort zone. All too often, and I've seen it consistent for over 45 years, people do not push themselves. They do not get out of their comfort zone. Why? Primarily because they're lazy. Just call it the way it is. They're lazy. They don't want to push themselves. You've got to get out of your comfort zone. It is very safe to stay in this place where we don't have to make any critical decisions, or we just kind of getting by. That's not making the best of your life, if you will. Now, one of the first steps in developing nonlinear thinking is to step out of your comfort zone. We talked about that, and for you that are regular viewers of the sessions, oftentimes I will repeat myself for a purpose, right? So once again, step out of your comfort zone. Basically, this concept involves seeing information or circumstances from a different perspective. That's worth repeating. Seeing information or circumstances from a different perspective. Well, oftentimes, being able to make the invisible visible, being able to see the end result. I talk about that in my visioning process, and we've talked about it in other sessions as well. So seeing information or circumstances from a different perspective. A zone is defined as an area we set apart in some way. And oftentimes we get in the zone, right? Those that are athletes, you know what I mean? You get in that zone. And when you are problem solving, once you get in that magic zone, it is absolutely just that, magical. A zone is defined as an area set apart in some way. In critical thinking and problem solving, we sometimes have to get out of areas or zones that's going to push us, that makes us comfortable and stretch our thinking. I cannot reinforce and state how critical that is. To get out of your comfort zone, reinforce your thinking, and stretch your thinking. That's often, when you don't do that, that is often called complacency, right? Now, when you're looking at critical thinking, and when you're following all of these steps, and you're going to say, Jim, you think I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning with some magic, and for me to be able to remember all these steps you lay out? Well, probably not. But you could if you decided to study it a little bit more, right? And when you're doing these, jumping out of your comfort zone, you have to be very careful not to jump to conclusions as well. Having a discussion today with some of my managers, first thing, they jump to conclusion. They interrupt. They don't listen to everything that's being said. They're listening with one half ear, just drives me insane. I don't know about you. So critical thinking, get out of your comfort zone, and listen to everything that's being said, and don't jump to conclusion. And then the important step in problem solving is taking the time to acquire the necessary information. Taking the time to acquire the necessary information. Taking the time to study the information. Often, again, as I said, we jump to conclusion before we have all the facts. We jump to conclusions before we have all the facts. Now, it's also been my experience that people do not want to get out of their comfort zone, do not want to get the facts that's necessary to make solid decisions, and it is a absolutely disaster if you stay in that particular situation. How can we use our understanding of logic to gather all the necessary facts? Remember, we talked about logic last week. How do we use logic to gather the necessary facts? Now, remember, the premises are the facts or statements that help us come to conclusion. Again, we discussed that last week in last week's session. Now, as you go through this critical thinking process, and you can see by now it starts kind of folding like a funnel, right? Now, part of the things you've got to do in your critical thinking, once you're getting out of your comfort zone, is expect and initiate change. I see that as a challenge, not only my own companies, but also the rest of the nation. Expect and initiate change. You've heard this statement I'm about to share with you many times. Be the change you wish to see, right? You've seen that. You're probably thinking, oh man, how corny that is, right, Jim? But be the change you wish to see. And it's a common slogan and a bumper sticker. You've seen it for years and years and years. With so many events happening, and gosh, we have so many events happening, right? We have so many events happening. As tragic as it is, this COVID-19, and I have the news on in the background prior to starting the session this evening. Well, we're pushing over 90,000 Americans that's lost their life as a result of this horrible, horrible virus. So part of the process that we're in now is critical thinking. The process that we're going through, the process that the president is going through to determine how do we move forward, the process that the researchers are going through, the process that the governors are going through, the process that business owners are going through to make tough decisions of how to move forward in our daily lives and to reopen, I'm going to use the word, our markets. So many events are happening, like I said, on a national and international level, each day, each minute. And right now, it is by the minute, it is by the hour, it's changing so fast. And change is simply a standard course of life. Change is just a standard course of business. Change is a standard course of everyday life. And I've said that before, right? We can always expect change in our organizations. For the ones that do not change in your organization, you will be left behind. We can always expect change in your organization. Nothing stays the same. But again, I'm seeing that a lot of things stay the change. Why? Because no critical thinking, no gathering the facts, and no doing the hard work that's necessary in order to progress to the next milestone. Nothing stays the same. Nothing. I've often said over the years in my workshops and the speaking engagements and with my different teams, to stay status quo takes a lot of work. Just visualize this duck on the pond, right? And their little legs are moving faster and faster and faster, just stay in one place, right? It takes a lot of energy to stay the same. And we sometimes are in the position where we the ones initiating the change. We the ones that are initiating the change. I'm a change agent. I know that we got to change to grow. I'm 71 years old. I've been in business and buying and turnaround and been in some of the toughest conditions on earth. Change is necessity. And nothing sets me freer, if that word, for people that do not recognize the importance of change. Change is critical if we're going to affect, and especially for business leaders, when we're looking at our mission of our organizations and what we're in business to do, our business to do not only to give a return to the shareholder, but to impact thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of people's lives on a daily basis in a positive way. And for the people that stand in the way of doing that, I have no patience for them whatsoever. So again, this is part of the critical thinking process. This is part of the change agent process. This is part of getting out of your comfort zone. It's all those things that you need to do in order to move forward. As I started off in the session, critical thinking and fact finding and making decisions and getting out of your comfort zone and trying to strike that fine balance between doing the right thing and not the right thing. Right thing for one person is the wrong thing for the other, right? But we got some critical thinking to do. We got some critical decisions to make tomorrow, next week, next month, leading up to November of 2020. We also, as we're going through this critical thinking process, we got to be ready to adapt. You got to adapt. You got to be able to spin on a dime. You got to pivot. You got to be ready to adapt. You got to be open to adapt. Last week, we talked about part of the critical thinking process was having an open mind. I say most minds are just absolutely closed, if you will. You got to be ready to adapt. The question in today's culture is not, will change occur in the United States, in your organization, in your life, but how well are employees at adapting to that change? How well are you adapting to the change? I'm finding most people are not very, very good at it whatsoever. Some others are. Others embrace it. Once you understand the end game, and you understand what the purpose of doing this session is to give you some tools to be able to think critically, make solid decisions, get out of your comfort zone, and adapt. It's absolutely critical. Employees, individuals, political leaders protect themselves from becoming obsolete by changing. That's what you do. If you don't change, you are obsolete. You will absolutely become. You'll be left behind, if you will. Adaptation is a survival skill of nature. I remember, and when I was going through some of my military training, we had escape and evasion courses we have to do. Escape and evasion. You got to adapt. You have resources that you're given. You've got to be able to survive with the resources you have in front of you. I know a lot of business leaders, a lot of employees, a lot of politicians, a lot of nonprofits, none of our clergy, and a lot of other people are just looking for this perfect set of circumstances. There's no such thing as a perfect set of circumstances. You've got to deal with what's in front of you. These species which survive in an environment are those who are capable of adapting well. And I use the word the species which survive in an environment are those that are capable of adapting well. These tools that I shared tonight are so critical. And for you that are watching live, I hope that you have taken my words in, because this is the extent of what I wanted to share with you this evening. I thought this was so important. I wanted to make a huge emphasis to let you know that you must adapt. You must be willing to change. Our nation is at risk, in my opinion, if we fail not to adapt, not do the critical thinking so we can make the change. And for you to decide to sit on the sidelines and do nothing, but think that you have the right to criticize others that out there on the front line, you don't have that right. So it's absolutely critical that we adapt and we embrace the challenges that are in front of us. Push, get out of your comfort zone. Start thinking critically. Start making solid decisions that will help you improve your career, your personal life, your business life, and for the politician, your political life. Next week, we're going to talk more about logical thinking. Logical thinking is a process which involves steps, and in general, logical thinking involves checking the components of arguments and making decisions and so on and so forth. So we're going to continue to look at that next week. But for this evening, I'm going to conclude with these thoughts, and these thoughts are: be careful. I hope our leaders understand that when we start this opening process, that we continue to communicate the severity of this very contagious virus. We've got to take it serious, and is keep the faith that there will be some vaccines forthcoming. In the meantime, we got to continue to change and adapt. So with that, I'm going to say thank you. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for attending each and every week, and we will talk to you next week. Have a good evening.
Thank you for your participation and interest in Jim White's webinar series. To stay in touch with Jim, go to www.authorjimwhite.com.